welcome back to BLOCKTV, and you're joined here live by Ethan Pierce, not from a bunker. That is just a Zoom background. Ethan Pierce from his living room, I presume. Thank you so much for joining us, director of the CryptoAssets Institute. Ethan, how's it going?
It's going really well. You gave away my secret, but that's yeah. The Zoom backgrounds are pretty cool.
Yeah, we're all having fun with them now. But listen, I'm not sure if this is an April Fool's joke or not, but apparently Binance is set. There are reports that Binance is set to acquire CoinMarketCap in a $400 million deal. Is this real?
Yeah, well, we would hope so, given the fact they've been pushing the news a lot. So, a few months ago, CZ from Binance said that they were going to be two big acquisitions in the pipeline that they were very excited about. So we could assume that this is probably one of those. $400 million in cash and stock places this up there, and probably the top 2 or 3 acquisitions in the crypto blockchain space for now. So yeah, I would think it seems to be a legitimate acquisition in story. So you've got, on one side, you've got CoinMarketCap, which is the most popular crypto data aggregator. It's 207 million visitors in the last 6 months. That's about twice as many visitors as Binance had. So, that ability to drive that kind of traffic to Binance and integrate those systems would be, I would say, a significant attraction for wanting to bring those two things together. Binance has 22% traffic share among all the crypto exchanges, with Coinbase just behind at around 21%. Binance has been on a tear of acquiring things. Last year, they picked up 9 different firms, at least. None of them are public, but you've got Trust Wallet and Dap Review and the Indian exchange Wazir, and there was a derivatives platform, Jex. All kinds of cool things. So I think that, yeah, they're definitely looking to expand their footprint and their access to data and services. So yeah, it's an interesting story. I think there's a lot of ways this could be a really cool thing for people, but on the flip side, for a community that prefers decentralization, I wonder exactly how this kind of acquisition will trend in terms of transparency and trust and the independence of data around that, by having the most visited third-party aggregator be combined with the most visited crypto exchange. But well, I guess we'll kind of see where that goes. I think one of the cool things, though, at least from an entrepreneur's perspective, is that CoinMarketCap was entirely bootstrapped, so no external investment or funding. That's a pretty good exit.
Yeah, well, not yet. Pretty good exit for them. They're no longer independent. And that's interesting, especially in the crypto sphere, which prides itself, like you mentioned, on decentralization. How will this affect people's view of CoinMarketCap, and how much will they trust their data? As well as, will we start seeing, the crypto sphere become more and more centralized as these success stories like Binance, like Coinbase, where they become bigger and stronger and start eating up the competition? Will it end up mirroring the traditional markets and look just like an Amazon or a Google, things like that?
Well, I mean, the thing is, for a lot of where the DeFi space will go and different dApps, those can be smaller, independent, decentralized, wonderful solutions. But when you're talking about data aggregation, when you're talking about platform level things, they tend to get bigger, because you need to have that size and that access to, Amazon is interesting because it has so many products and has such a distributed, strong logistical system that they've built up over all this time. So you can go use a different e-commerce website that's smaller, but you don't necessarily have access to as many products or as robust of a logistics system. So you've got the two sides of it. Do you want to go with the little guy, or do you want to go with the big guy? So platforms tend to aggregate towards larger systems like this. And so I think it's kind of natural that exchanges and data aggregators and other things would do this. I think we'll hopefully see more of the smaller things move towards the DeFi and dApp space and stay independent.
Mm-hmm. Is there a fear here, that CZ, who pretty much is Binance, or runs it with a strong hand, if he could kind of use the power that CoinMarketCap gives him, whether to either gatekeep and kind of keep other competitor exchanges' information off the site, or on the flip end, kind of manipulate or choose what data that Binance wants to share on the CoinMarketCap?
So I think what's always interesting is acquisitions like this are actually pretty good for competition, because they'll create the opportunity for the other data aggregators to potentially scale, because they are not associated with Binance or whatever large partner that would be. So I think it would be, I think it's unrealistic. I mean, obviously companies can behave badly and unethically, but I think it's unrealistic to think that they would do that in this situation, because other platforms are going, there are other data aggregators out there that are potentially going to scale up because they're still independent, and people will use them potentially more than CoinMarketCap for that reason. I think all of those things together would mean that it would be easy to identify data that's being manipulated or being pushed in order to preference any IEOs or projects or coins that Binance wanted to push out. I don't, I think Binance tends to be a pretty good actor in these things. I think we can always find fault in large organizations, but I think it would be hard to do any kind of manipulation and get away with it.
Mm-hmm. All right, now switching to France, where you are situated right now, the French central bank has put out a call for digital currency experiments in these times. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so lots of discussions going on around the CBDC space. We've got the e-krona in Sweden, which has gotten a lot of attention recently. That's on the retail side, people being able to spend a digital currency. We've got the digital dollar discussions going on a little bit in the US with all the different stuff going around the payments for coronavirus and different things to stimulate the economy. So the retail side's moving pretty well. What they want to do here is more on the wholesale side. So it's about interbank settlements. They want to, figure out, what's going on in terms of innovation for clearing and settling any kind of tokenized financial asset. So, yeah, I think what's pretty cool. So the three things they want to identify is to show how traditional interbank settlement could be carried out using CBDCs based on really all kinds of different technologies. Identify the benefits of a central bank digital currency for the current ecosystem with its market and payment infrastructures, how CBDCs could foster innovation in finance, and analyze what the effects that might have on financial stability or monetary policy. So, they're looking at this as an experiment. It's not necessarily to roll out a solution. It's to allow them to be informed about how to approach wholesale CBDC discussions, both in France and on the European level. So applications are open through the 15th of May. They'll be selecting up to 10 projects to work on these ideas, through these partnerships with the French central bank. The main things are they're not imposing any specific technologies. It doesn't even actually have to be a blockchain thing, but that's pretty likely that would be the case. Being pretty flexible about how this would go. They just want it to cover either wholesale, either delivery versus payment of listed or unlisted securities, payment versus payment with other central bank digital currencies, or payment against other digital assets. So that's kind of the categories. They've got a pretty clear document on their website in English that would allow you to understand more about what's going on with this opportunity. You have to be established in the EU, but not necessarily in France. You've got till May 15th, and on July 10th, they'll announce the 10 candidates.
Mm-hmm. What I like here, though, is that they're actually just putting out for information. They're not putting restrictions. They're not telling the private sector, hey, this is what you should do. Rather, they're trying to see what ideas and get knowledge from the private sector, which is something that I really like and appreciate. And one of the few comments I give to the central banks in these times. But besides that, it seems like, a CBDC specifically for wholesale settlements between banks and central banks for the blockchain, that seems like such an obvious application. When you're talking about retail, it's harder to scale, it's harder to educate, it's harder to do UI UX. But when you're dealing with wholesale settlements, central banks, I mean, this is, it seems as obvious as could possibly be when it comes to this. So exciting to hear about what comes out of here. But switching gears a little bit, a lot of governments, in their attempt to kind of fight the coronavirus and try to stop the spread, have kind of imposed certain, let's say, authoritarian-esque moves using technologies to kind of track virus carriers. And your opinions on whether that is needed or necessary or should be allowed, that's not for now. But in this time of increasingly government overwatch and control, here it seems like the Opera browser is actually putting out some good news for citizens who kind of want some privacy. They're adding support for censorship-resistant internet. What's the details there?
Yeah, so there's a couple different interesting things recently for Opera. So they just integrated the Interplanetary File System, IPFS, which allows you to distribute web hosting file sharing across a network of thousands of computers. They've got 360 million users. This is the largest and really the first major browser to integrate this protocol. They also expanded a service that they'd recently launched to allow crypto purchases using Apple Pay directly from the integrated wallet that they have built into Opera. And then specifically, this one is unstoppable domains, crypto domains that they've integrated. So these are interesting things because most domain names are like .coms or other things are managed by ICANN. And you have to use a domain registrar like GoDaddy or OVH or things like that, who act as custodians for you to purchase and administer that domain name. And that creates a lot of opportunities for error, but also censorship, even loss of domain name access, because there's a third party in there that's managing access to these things as custodians. So for crypto domains, .crypto domains, what's interesting is these are hosted on the public Ethereum blockchain. So only the owner of the private key of a .crypto domain can actually control that site. So it becomes censor proof in that sense. You don't necessarily have to use Opera. There are plugins, browser extensions for other browsers, but this is really interesting that Opera has rolled this out, integrated into the browser. And I think what becomes fun here is we talk a lot about decentralized applications in terms of dApps and DeFi and all these different things, but at some point they have to tap into centralized technologies like the ICANN administered domain name system. So with a system like this, you actually become truly decentralized in the fact that between your browser and the .crypto domain, you don't have any third parties getting in the way of access to your dApp's website. So I think that's pretty cool. Around 1,200 websites have been built so far using the tools. I think that'll scale up pretty quickly as this starts to get some adoption. This is not about accessing content, so it's not about viewing. You still need a VPN if you're behind a firewall in a country that doesn't want you to access things. That side of things still requires a solution. This is actually about publishing. This is about you having access to be able to create a website or a platform and have people access it. So this is the ability to publish and push information that is really interesting about these .crypto domains. So I think it's a pretty interesting concept. I think that I think we're going to see more and more solutions around this space to provide more decentralized or at least parallel access to information on the internet or eventually the internets. So yeah, it's pretty interesting to see what they're doing at Opera.
And especially, going with that idea of unique solutions to providing data, especially in this time, IBM and Oracle they've just launched a blockchain to integrate the COVID-19 data from the WHO, the World Health Organization, with the CDC. This is really interesting. What's the story here?
Yeah, so Hasera, it's an enterprise blockchain company, just launched a platform called MIPASA, M-I-P-A-S-A, that is basically going to be a data aggregation and analytics platform that you could then use an API to pull from and build applications around. It's a partnership with IBM, Oracle, Microsoft, the World Health Organization, the CDC, the European CDC, Weather Channel, Johns Hopkins, and I'm sure even lots of other partners. Well, the idea here is actually to take all of these siloed data sets and to integrate them together so that you can potentially draw trends across from them and figure out whether or not the data is true in the sense of, data is only as good as where it's coming from. So making sure that all of this data kind of correlates and makes sense between them. So the quote that they have is that MIPASA is a global scale control and communication system enabling swift and precise early detection of COVID-19 carriers and hotspots through basically all of this data sharing between individuals, state authorities, health institutions, hospitals, all kinds of different things. And so I think that's really going to be useful. The CEO of this, was very right in saying that we are not a couple weeks out from this being over. This is months long process in front of us, and in reality, years long before this is something that's completely managed on a global level. So it definitely over the next couple of months, having tools that allow us to quickly identify where things are at in terms of hotspots and other things that potentially are as privacy respective as possible, since we've seen other tools that have been, whether it's in Korea or China or in Israel or elsewhere that are using cell phone data or other things to track without necessarily being terribly respectful of data privacy, argue about whether or not that's good or bad. This is about taking data and generally this is not data that's going to be as individually identifying, but taking this kind of more macro data and finding trends in it. So I think that's pretty cool. It's a very interesting concept that they put together. We're seeing all kinds of really interesting stuff coming out. It's a Hyperledger Fabric platform that they've built, and people will be able to leverage that to build whatever tools they'd like to. If you want to build a map that kind of shows where the infections are at in your local area, or whatever that might be able to pull that out and work with. So they're looking to attract all kinds of researchers in statistics and probability, machine learning, and AI. So if this interests you, check out their website and get involved.
Oh, well, it seems like blockchain is finally coming to save the world. Thank you so much, Ethan Pierce, for joining us today. And as always, for all our viewers, if you want more on blockchain, cryptocurrency, and technology news, make sure to check us out at blocktv.com.
Watch us on Amazon Fire TV and Roku.